The leather-bound diary lay half-buried in the dust beside an abandoned wagon, its pages fluttering in the hot New Mexico wind like a wounded bird trying to fly. And Harrison Cole knew the moment he picked it up that his life was about to change forever. It was August 1878, and Harrison had been riding through the high desert country north of Santa Fe for 3 days straight, tracking a mare that had broken loose from his ranch outside Abiquiu. The wagon sat alone in a shallow arroyo, one wheel broken, the canvas torn and bleached by the relentless sun. No bodies, no blood, just the scattered remnants of someone's life, papers and clothes and cooking implements strewn across the red earth like seeds that would never take root. He should have kept riding, should have left the diary where it lay and continued his search for the mare. But Harrison had always been curious, had always wondered about the stories behind abandoned things, and so he dismounted, his boots crunching on the dry ground, and bent to retrieve the small book. The first page stopped him cold. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, the ink smudged in places as if tears had fallen on the paper while it dried. "My name is Adelaide Morgan, and if you are reading this, I am likely dead. But before I leave this world, I need to write down the truth of who I am, because no one has ever truly understood me, and I cannot bear the thought of disappearing without leaving some record of my real self behind." Harrison stood there in the dying light, the diary open in his calloused hands, and began to read. He told himself he would scan a few pages, just enough to understand what had happened here, but Adelaide's words pulled him in like a current in a river, and soon he was sitting against the wagon wheel, completely absorbed. She wrote about growing up in Philadelphia, the daughter of a wealthy banker who expected her to marry well and produce heirs, and never speak an opinion of her own. She wrote about the books she read in secret, about her dreams of seeing the West, about the way she felt trapped in corsets and parlors and polite conversation that meant nothing. She wrote about her mother's death when she was 16, about her father's increasing coldness, about the suitor he had chosen for her, a man twice her age who looked at her like she was a prize horse he was considering purchasing. "I feel like I am screaming inside a glass box," she wrote on one page. "Everyone can see me, but no one can hear me. They see the smile, the proper posture, the appropriate responses. They do not see the part of me that wants to run through fields, to ride horses at full gallop, to sleep under stars and wake to birdsong instead of church bells. They do not see the part of me that reads about geology and paleontology, that wonders about the formation of mountains and the creatures that once walked this earth. They do not see the real Adelaide at all." Harrison felt something twist in his chest. He had never been much for reading, had barely made it through his schooling before his father died, and he had to take over the ranch at 17. But these words, they reached into him and touched something he had thought was unique to his own experience. The feeling of being seen but not understood. The sense that there was more to life than what everyone expected of you. He kept reading as the sun set and the stars came out. Adelaide wrote about her escape, about stealing money from her father's desk, and boarding a train west with nothing but a carpet bag and the clothes on her back. She wrote about her terror and exhilaration, about the first time she saw the mountains, about arriving in Santa Fe and finding work as a teacher in a small school. She wrote about buying this wagon and these supplies, about her plan to travel north to Abiquiu, where she had heard there was a need for educated women, where she hoped to start a new life far from her father's reach. The final entry was dated 3 weeks ago. "Tomorrow, I leave Santa Fe. I am frightened and excited in equal measure. The man at the livery stable says the road to Abiquiu is safe enough, though I should watch for storms. I have everything I need. Food, water, books, paper, my pressed flowers, my collection of rocks and fossils I have gathered here. I feel like I am finally becoming who I was meant to be. I feel like I am finally free. And then nothing. The rest of the pages were blank. Harrison closed the diary carefully and looked around the abandoned campsite with new eyes. No sign of violence. No graves. The supplies were scattered but not ransacked. It looked like Adelaide had simply walked away, taking nothing but perhaps a canteen and whatever she could carry. He spent that night beside the wagon, his horse tethered nearby, and in the morning he began to track. It was not hard. Adelaide Morgan might have been educated and well-read, but she knew nothing about covering her trail. He found her footprints heading north, small and determined. He found places where she had rested, sitting on rocks that still held the faint impression of fabric. He found a handkerchief caught on a sage bush, embroidered with her initials. She was 3 days ahead of him, but she was on foot and he was on horseback. He would catch her. The question was why he was doing this at all. He had a ranch to run, cattle to tend, a mare to find. He had no business chasing after a woman he had never met, a woman who had clearly chosen to abandon her wagon and continue on foot for reasons he could not fathom. But those words kept echoing in his mind. No one has ever truly understood me. Harrison was 26 years old and had spent most of his life alone. His mother had died in childbirth. His father had been a hard man who believed in work and silence. And after the old man passed, Harrison had run the ranch with the help of 2 hired hands who respected him but kept their distance. He had no siblings, no close friends, no sweetheart. The women in Abiquiu were nice enough, but they always seemed disappointed when they talked to him, as if they expected something more charming or eloquent than what he could offer. He was good with animals, good with his hands, good at reading the land and the weather. But words had never come easy to him, and people seemed to find him dull. Yet Adelaide's words had not felt foreign to him. They had felt like a mirror, reflecting back something he had always felt but never articulated. The sense of being fundamentally alone even in a crowd. The feeling that his real self was hidden somewhere deep inside where no one bothered to look. So he tracked her through the high desert, following her footprints and the occasional dropped item, a button here, a torn piece of fabric there. On the second day, he found a place where she had clearly spent the night, a shallow cave in the red rocks where she had built a small fire. The ashes were cold, but he could see where she had arranged stones in a careful circle, where she had swept the ground clear before lying down. On the third day, the tracks became erratic. She was exhausted, stumbling. He found a place where she had fallen, the imprint of her body in the dust, and his heart began to pound with worry. How much water did she have? How much food? The August sun was merciless, and even in the shade of the rocks, the heat was enough to kill. He pushed his horse harder, following the trail as it wound through a maze of canyons and arroyos. And then, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, he saw her. She was sitting in the shade of a cottonwood tree beside a small spring, her back against the trunk, her dark hair loose and tangled down her back. She wore a simple gray dress, torn and dusty, and her face was sunburned despite the bonnet that lay discarded beside her. She had a canteen in her lap and was writing in another small notebook, her hand moving slowly across the page. Harrison dismounted and approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. But she must have heard him because she looked up, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. She was younger than he had expected, maybe 23 or 24. Her face was more interesting than pretty, with sharp cheekbones and a firm jaw and eyes that were a startling shade of green. Those eyes were wary now, and she set down her notebook and reached for something beside her, a large rock that she clearly intended to use as a weapon if necessary. "Adelaide Morgan," Harrison said, keeping his distance, his hands visible and empty, the wariness in her eyes intensified. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" "My name is Harrison Cole. I found your wagon 3 days back, found your diary beside it." He gestured to his saddlebag where the leather-bound book rested. "I have been tracking you to make sure you were safe. You read my diary." Her voice was hoarse, probably from thirst and sun exposure, but there was fury in it too. "You read my private thoughts?" "Yes, madam, I did." Harrison met her gaze steadily. "And I am not going to apologize for it, because if I had not, I would not have known you needed help." "I do not need help." Adelaide stood up, swaying slightly, the rock still clutched in her hand. "I am perfectly fine on my own." "You are 3 days on foot in desert country with barely any supplies, and you are sunburned and dehydrated and probably have not eaten a proper meal since you left your wagon." Harrison kept his voice calm and factual. "That is not being perfectly fine. My wagon wheel broke. I could not fix it. I chose to continue on foot rather than wait for help that might never come." She lifted her chin defiantly. "I am not some helpless woman who needs rescuing. I never said you were helpless, but being capable and being in a dangerous situation are not mutually exclusive." Harrison took a step closer and Adelaide raised the rock higher. He stopped. "I am not here to hurt you or drag you back to Philadelphia or whatever you are afraid of. I am here because I read your words and I understand you." Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty. Hope. Fear. "You cannot possibly understand me," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "No one does. You wrote about feeling like you are screaming inside a glass box, about how everyone sees the surface but no one sees the real you." Harrison's voice was rough with emotion he rarely let himself feel, let alone express. "About wanting more than what people expect, about feeling alone even when you are surrounded by others." Adelaide lowered the rock slowly. "You memorized what I wrote, some of it. The parts that felt like I could have written them myself if I had the words." He pulled the diary from his saddlebag and held it out to her. "I understand you, Adelaide. Maybe I am the only person who ever will. And I think you need to know that before you die out here in the desert trying to prove you do not need anyone." She stared at him for a long moment, and then, to his surprise, she started to laugh. It was a bitter, exhausted sound, but there was genuine amusement in it too. "You are very blunt, Mr. Cole." "Harrison, and yes, I am, never had much use for pretty words. Yet you tracked me for 3 days based on the words in my diary, based on the feelings in your diary. There is a difference." Adelaide walked toward him slowly, her legs clearly unsteady. When she was close enough, she took the diary from his hands, holding it against her chest like a talisman. Up close, he could see the intelligence in her eyes, the strength in the set of her jaw, the vulnerability she was trying so hard to hide. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because you are not a stranger. I know things about you that most people never know about anyone. I know you are brave and foolish and desperate for freedom. I know you collected rocks and fossils because you wonder about the age of the earth and what lived here before us. I know you read books on geology, even though women are not supposed to be interested in such things. I know you left everything behind because you could not breathe in the life you were living." Harrison swallowed hard. "And I know what that feels like, to be so alone that you would risk dying just to feel alive." Tears spilled down Adelaide's sunburned cheeks, leaving clean tracks through the dust. She did not seem to notice. She was staring at him like he was a miracle, like he was something she had stopped believing could exist. "I do not even know you," she whispered. "Not yet. But you could. If you wanted. I was going to Abiquiu to find work, to start over. I have a ranch outside Abiquiu, raise horses and some cattle. It is not much, but it is mine and it is peaceful. Harrison felt his heart hammering in his chest, felt himself taking a leap he had never taken before. You could come there. I have a spare room. You could rest, recover, figure out what you want to do next. No obligations, no expectations, just a safe place while you find your footing. Adelaide searched his face, looking for deception or ulterior motives. Harrison let her look. He had nothing to hide. You would do that for me. Let a strange woman stay in your home. You are not strange. You are different. There is a difference. He allowed himself a small smile. And I have a housekeeper who comes twice a week, so it would not be entirely improper. That made her laugh again, more genuinely this time. I left Philadelphia to escape propriety, and here you are worried about my reputation. I am worried about your safety and your health. The reputation is just a practical concern, because small towns talk, and if people talk badly about you, it will be harder for you to find work when you are ready. Adelaide looked down at the diary in her hands, then back at Harrison. You really do understand, do you not? How the things people say can trap you just as surely as walls. Yes, I really do. She took a deep breath, and Harrison could see her making the decision, weighing her fierce independence against her very real need for help. Finally, she nodded. All right, I will accept your offer. But only until I can find work in a place of my own. I will not be a burden. You could never be a burden. Harrison went to his horse and returned with his canteen. Now drink some water, slowly, and then we will get you on my horse and head for home. It is about a 4-hour ride if we take it easy. Adelaide drank gratefully, and Harrison watched as some of the tension left her shoulders as she allowed herself, perhaps for the first time in weeks, to accept help. He gathered her few belongings, the notebook and canteen and the small satchel she had managed to carry from the wagon, and secured them to his saddle. Then he helped her mount, trying not to notice how she swayed with exhaustion, how her hands trembled as she gripped the saddle horn. I will walk alongside, he said. You just hold on and rest. I can walk. It is your horse. And I am offering it to you. Please, Adelaide, let yourself accept this. She looked down at him, and something in her expression softened. You are a strange man, Harrison Cole. You are not the first person to say so. They traveled through the cooling evening, Harrison leading his horse and Adelaide dozing in the saddle, occasionally jerking awake and looking around in confusion before remembering where she was. Harrison found himself glancing back at her constantly, making sure she had not fallen, making sure she was as comfortable as possible. He had never felt protective of anyone before, not like this. It was a strange sensation, both unsettling and deeply satisfying. The stars came out in their thousands, the Milky Way a bright river across the black sky. Adelaide woke fully as they crested a rise, and Harrison heard her gasp. It is beautiful, she breathed. I have never seen so many stars. In Philadelphia, you can barely see them through all the smoke and lights. Out here, the sky is the best part of the night. Sometimes I sleep outside just to watch them. Harrison paused, then added, You wrote about wanting to wake to birdsong instead of church bells. Out here, we have meadowlarks and canyon wrens, and sometimes, if you are lucky, the owls talking to each other across the valley. You really did read it carefully. There was wonder in her voice, but also a hint of fear. It is strange, having someone know so much about your inner life. If it is any consolation, you know my deepest truth too now. What truth is that? That I am lonely. That I understand what it means to be unseen. That I read a stranger's diary and tracked her through the desert because her words made me feel less alone in the world. Harrison kept his eyes on the path ahead, afraid to see pity in her face. That is not something I would ever admit to anyone else." There was a long silence, and then Adelaide said softly, "Thank you for telling me that. It does help to know I am not the only one who shares secrets today." They reached the ranch just before midnight. It was a modest spread, a sturdy adobe house with a wide porch, a barn, a corral where several horses drowsed in the moonlight. Harrison helped Adelaide down from the horse, and she stood looking at the house with an expression he could not quite read. "It is nice," she said finally. "It looks peaceful." "It is. Come inside, I will get you settled." The house was simple but clean, with whitewashed walls and wooden floors and furniture that Harrison had built himself over the years. He lit lamps and showed Adelaide to the spare room, which was small but had a good bed and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "There is a wash basin and fresh water in the pitcher," he said, gesturing to the dresser. "I will bring you some food and then you should rest. Tomorrow we can talk about everything else, Harrison." Adelaide's voice stopped him at the door. "Thank you. I know I was difficult when you found me. I am not used to accepting help, but I am grateful, truly." "You do not need to thank me. I am just glad I found you in time." He met her eyes across the small room. "Get some rest. You are safe here." He left her then and went to the kitchen, where he prepared a simple meal of bread and cheese and cold meat. When he brought it to her room, he found her sitting on the bed, still in her dusty dress, staring at her hands. "I should wash first," she said, "but I am so tired I can barely move. Eat first. Wash later if you want, or wash tomorrow. It does not matter." Harrison set the plate on the dresser. "I will be down the hall if you need anything. Sleep as late as you want." She nodded, and he left her alone, closing the door softly behind him. In his own room, Harrison lay awake for a long time, thinking about the day, about the woman sleeping down the hall, about the strange feeling in his chest that he was not sure he had ever felt before. It was like hope, but deeper, like recognition, like finding something he had not known he was searching for. The next morning, Harrison woke early as always and went out to tend the horses. His two hired hands, Louis and Samuel, arrived at dawn, and he told them briefly that he had a guest staying for a while, a woman from back east who needed a place to rest. They asked no questions, just nodded and went about their work. Harrison was grateful for their discretion. Adelaide did not emerge from her room until nearly noon. When she finally came into the kitchen, Harrison was surprised by the transformation. She had washed and changed into a simple blue dress that must have been in her satchel. Her dark hair was clean and pinned up, though several strands had already escaped to frame her face. She looked younger and more vulnerable without the dust and exhaustion, but also more herself somehow. "Good morning," Harrison said, setting down the bridle he had been mending. "There is coffee on the stove, and I can make you some eggs if you are hungry. Coffee would be wonderful, and please let me help. I am not an invalid." Adelaide moved to the stove with surprising confidence, pouring herself a cup and inhaling the steam with obvious pleasure. "This is very good coffee. Louis brings it from his family in Socorro, better than anything you can buy in Abiquiu." Harrison watched as she looked around the kitchen, taking in the sturdy table, the shelves lined with dishes and preserves, the sunlight streaming through the windows. "It is not fancy, but it is functional. It is lovely. You built this yourself, the furniture, yes. The house was here when I inherited the land from my father, but I have made improvements over the years." Harrison gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Let me make you breakfast. You need to build your strength back up." Adelaide started to protest, then seemed to think better of it and sat down, cradling her coffee cup in both hands. "You are very kind, Harrison, kinder than I am used to. That says more about the people you have known than about me." He cracked eggs into a skillet and added some peppers and onions from the garden. How are you feeling this morning? Sore, sunburned, but better than yesterday. She paused. I have been thinking about what you said, about understanding me. I kept expecting to wake up and find it was a dream, or that you would be different in the morning. More like other men I have known. And am I? No, you are exactly as you were yesterday, which is confusing and reassuring in equal measure. Adelaide sipped her coffee. I do not know what to do with you, Harrison Cole. You do not need to do anything with me. I am just offering you a place to stay and a chance to figure out what comes next. He plated the eggs and set them in front of her, along with fresh bread and butter. Eat. And then, if you are feeling up to it, I will show you around the ranch. They spent the afternoon walking the property, Adelaide recovering her energy with each hour that passed. Harrison showed her the horses, introducing each one by name and personality. He showed her the garden where he grew vegetables, the small orchard of fruit trees, the path that led up into the foothills where you could see for miles in every direction. Adelaide asked questions constantly, intelligent questions that showed she was truly paying attention. She asked about the soil composition, about water sources, about which plants grew wild and which had been cultivated. She asked about the horses, about breeding and training, about the market for different animals. She asked about the nearby towns, about the people who lived there, about what industries supported them. You really are interested in everything, are you not? Harrison said as they stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, the ranch spread out below them like a child's toy. I spent 23 years being told to smile and be quiet and not ask questions. Now that I am free, I cannot seem to stop asking them. Adelaide turned to him, her eyes bright with something he thought might be happiness. You do not mind. It is the most enjoyable conversation I have had in years. Most people around here think I am boring because I do not gossip or talk about things that do not matter. But you want to talk about things I actually care about. It is refreshing. You are not boring at all. You are thoughtful. There is a difference. Adelaide looked back at the valley and her expression grew more serious. I need to start looking for work soon. I cannot impose on your hospitality forever. You have been here one day. That is not forever. Harrison hesitated, then said carefully, What kind of work are you looking for? I was trained as a teacher. I can read, write, do mathematics. I speak some French and Latin. I can keep books, manage a household. Adelaide's voice grew bitter. All the accomplishments expected of a lady, though none of them were supposed to be used for actual employment. The school in Abiquiu might need a teacher. The last one left to get married about 6 months ago, and they have been making do with whoever is available. Harrison paused. But if you want something different, there might be other options. The general store owner is getting old and could probably use help with his ledgers. Or there is a widow who runs a boarding house and is always complaining about needing an extra pair of hands. Adelaide was quiet for a moment. You have been thinking about this, about where I might find work. I told you, you are not a burden. I want you to succeed here, to build the life you want. She turned to him then, really looked at him, and Harrison felt something shift in the air between them. It was not quite attraction, not yet, but it was recognition, understanding, the sense that they were standing on the edge of something significant. Why are you doing this? Adelaide asked softly. And please do not say it is because you read my diary. There is more to it than that, is there not? Harrison considered lying or deflecting, but he had told her he understood her, and that meant being honest even when it was uncomfortable. I am 26 years old, and I have never met anyone who made me feel less alone, not until I read your words. And then I found you, and you are real, and you are here, and I keep thinking that maybe I am not as strange as everyone has always made me feel, that maybe there is someone else in the world who sees things the way I do. He swallowed hard. I am not asking for anything from you. I am not expecting gratitude or affection or anything else. I just want you to know that you are not alone either, that someone understands. Adelaide's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You are going to make me cry again, and I am not a woman who cries easily. I have noticed. You seem to prefer fury or determination. That made her laugh, breaking the tension. You do pay attention, do not you, to you? Yes, it is not difficult. You are the most interesting person I have ever met. They stood there on the ridge as the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and pink. Harrison wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that she could stay as long as she wanted, that he would be happy to have her here forever if that was what she chose. But it was too soon, too much, and he did not want to frighten her away. So he just stood beside her and watched the sunset, and that was enough. In the days that followed, they fell into an easy routine. Harrison worked with the horses and cattle, and Adelaide helped where she could, learning quickly despite having no previous experience with ranch work. She was not afraid of hard work or getting dirty, and she approached each new task with the same curiosity and determination she had shown on their walk. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk. Adelaide told him about her life in Philadelphia, about the books she loved and the places she wanted to see. Harrison told her about the ranch, about his parents, about the loneliness of running a place like this alone. They talked about everything and nothing, conversations that meandered from philosophy to practical matters to shared jokes. Harrison found himself watching for her smile, found himself thinking of things to tell her while he worked, found himself hurrying through his chores so he could get back to the house where she was. It was not just attraction, though he was attracted to her. It was something deeper, a fundamental connection he had never experienced before. Adelaide seemed to feel it too. He caught her watching him sometimes with a look of wonder on her face, as if she could not quite believe he was real. She would reach out to touch his arm when they talked, small unconscious gestures that made his heart race. She would seek him out during the day, bringing him water when he was working in the sun, asking his opinion on things she was reading, simply wanting to be near him. It was Mrs. Alvarez, the housekeeper who came twice a week, who first put the fear in Harrison's mind. "The girl is lovely," she said in her blunt way, watching Adelaide through the window as she fed carrots to the horses. "But people in town are starting to talk. Let them talk. Adelaide is my guest, and it is none of their business. You know it does not work that way, Harrison. A young unmarried woman staying with a young unmarried man, even with me coming to chaperone. People will draw conclusions. And those conclusions will make it harder for her to find respectable work when she is ready." Harrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if you care about her future here, you need to think about appearances. Either she needs to find her own place soon, or you need to make the situation more permanent and proper." Mrs. Alvarez gave him a knowing look, "And from the way you look at her, I think you would prefer the second option." She was right, of course. Harrison had been falling in love with Adelaide Morgan since the moment he read her diary, and every day they spent together deepened that love. But it had only been 2 weeks. How could he possibly ask her to marry him after 2 weeks? She had just escaped one cage. He could not ask her to enter another, even if he promised it would be different. That evening he sat with Adelaide on the porch as usual, but he was quiet, distracted. She noticed immediately. "What is wrong?" she asked, setting down her book. "You have barely said 3 words since dinner." "Mrs. Alvarez said people in town are talking about you staying here, about us." Harrison kept his eyes on the distant mountains. "She said it might hurt your chances of finding work if they think you are living here improperly." Adelaide was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. "What do you want me to do?" "I do not want you to do anything, but I do not want to hurt your chances of building a life here either." He finally looked at her. "I have been selfish, wanting you to stay, not thinking about the consequences. You have been nothing but generous and kind. Do not twist it into something else." Adelaide stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, her back to him. "I knew this could not last forever. I knew I would have to face the world eventually. I just did not want it to be so soon." Harrison stood and moved to stand beside her. "Adelaide, I am fine. I will go into town tomorrow and inquire about work. Mrs. Alvarez is right. The longer I wait, the more difficult it will be." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the hurt beneath it. "I do not want you to go." "Then what do you want, Harrison? Because I am tired of trying to guess what people want from me. Tell me plainly." He took a breath, knowing he was about to risk everything, but unable to stay silent any longer. "I want you to stay. I want you to be here when I wake up and when I go to sleep. I want to hear your questions and your thoughts and your laugh. I want to show you all the places on this land that are beautiful and meaningful to me. I want to know everything about you, not just what I read in your diary, but all the things you have thought and felt and experienced since then." He turned to face her fully. "I want you, Adelaide, all of you, for as long as you will let me." She stared at him, her green eyes wide. "Harrison, I know it is too soon. I know you just escaped a man who wanted to own you, and here I am saying I want you too, but it is not the same. I do not want to possess you or control you or change you. I want you to be free to be exactly who you are. I just want to be here while you do it. I want to be the person who understands you." He swallowed hard. "I am in love with you, Adelaide. I have been since I read your words and realized I was not alone in the world. And I know it is mad to love someone after 2 weeks, but I do not care. It is the truth." Adelaide's eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. "You are right. It is mad. We barely know each other. This is not how love is supposed to work. I know. You are supposed to court someone properly for months or even years. You are supposed to be sure. I know. This goes against all logic and sense and reason. I know that too." She laughed then, a sound of pure joy. "And yet I love you anyway. I think I started falling for you when you said I understand you while I was holding a rock and trying to look dangerous. I think I fell further when you made me eggs and showed me your horses. I think I fell completely when you told me I was interesting instead of strange." She reached out and took his hand. "I came west looking for freedom and I found it, but I also found something I did not know I was looking for. I found someone who sees me, really sees me. And that is more valuable than all the freedom in the world." Harrison felt like his heart might burst. "Adelaide, I am not good with words. I am not charming or eloquent. I cannot promise you an easy life or wealth or excitement. All I can promise is that I will always see you. I will always understand you, and I will always make sure you have the space to be whoever you want to be. That is all I have ever wanted." She stepped closer to him. "But Harrison, I need you to know something. I am not going to be a traditional wife. I am going to ask questions and read books and probably get involved in things that people think I should not care about. I am going to have opinions and express them. I am not going to be quiet or demure or any of the things I was raised to be. Good. I do not want you to be any of those things. I want you to be Adelaide. And I want to keep learning. About the land, about geology, about whatever interests me. I want to collect fossils and study the rock formations and maybe even write about what I discover. Then that is what you will do. I will help you however I can. And I want children someday, but not right away. I want time to just be married, to just be us, before we add more people to the mix. That is fine with me. We will take our time." Adelaide searched his face, looking for any hint of deception or reservation. Harrison let her look, knowing she would find only honesty. Finally, she nodded. Then yes. Yes, I will marry you, Harrison Cole. I will stay here and build a life with you and be loved by someone who understands me. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. And I will love you back with everything I have. Harrison kissed her then, a soft, gentle kiss that tasted of tears and joy and promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. We should probably do this properly, Harrison said. I should talk to the minister, get a license, give you time to plan if you want. I do not need time or plans, I need you. Let us go into town tomorrow and do whatever we need to do to make this official. I do not want to wait. Are you sure? You have only been here 2 weeks. People will think we are rushing. People have thought plenty about me already, and I do not care. I spent my whole life moving slowly and carefully and doing what I was supposed to do, and it made me miserable. Now I want to move fast. I want to grab this chance while it is in front of me. Adelaide smiled at him. Unless you are having second thoughts. Never. Not about you. Then tomorrow we go into Abiquiu and get married, and then we come back here and start our life together. They sat together on the porch until the stars came out, talking and planning and simply being together. Harrison felt like he was living in a dream, like any moment he would wake up and find himself alone again. But Adelaide was real and warm beside him, her hand in his, her voice filling the spaces he had always thought would be empty forever. The next day they rode into Abiquiu together, Adelaide sitting in front of Harrison on his horse, both of them giddy with anticipation. The town was small, just a cluster of adobe buildings along the Rio Chama, but it had a church and a minister, and that was all they needed. Reverend Townsend was surprised by their request, but agreed to marry them that afternoon after they obtained a license. Mrs. Alvarez agreed to serve as witness, her face split by a knowing smile that said she had predicted this exact outcome. Adelaide wore her blue dress and pinned wildflowers in her hair. Harrison wore his cleanest shirt and combed his hair for the first time in weeks. They stood before the minister in the small church with afternoon light streaming through the windows, and they spoke their vows with steady voices and certain hearts. I promise to see you, Harrison said when it was his turn, to understand you, to give you space to be whoever you want to be, to love you for exactly who you are. I promise to see you too, Adelaide replied, tears streaming down her face. To appreciate your steadiness and your kindness and your honesty, to build a life with you that is true to both of us, to love you with all that I am. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison kissed Adelaide with all the tenderness and passion he felt, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. Mrs. Alvarez wiped her eyes, and even the minister looked touched. They rode back to the ranch as the sun began to set, and Harrison carried Adelaide over the threshold of their home while she laughed and protested that she was perfectly capable of walking. He set her down gently in the main room, and they stood there for a moment, suddenly shy with each other. So, Adelaide said, we are married. Yes, we are. That was rather fast. Do you regret it? Not even slightly. She smiled at him. Do you? Never. Harrison pulled her close. You are my wife. I cannot quite believe it. I am Adelaide Cole now. That will take some getting used to. You can keep your own name if you want, or use both, whatever feels right to you. I think I like Adelaide Cole. It sounds like a fresh start. She leaned her head against his chest. Thank you, Harrison, for finding me, for understanding me, for loving me. Thank you for being brave enough to leave Philadelphia, for writing your truth in that diary, for giving me a chance even though I am just a simple rancher who cannot offer you excitement or adventure. You offered me something better. You offered me understanding. And that is worth more than all the adventure in the world. They spent their wedding night talking and kissing and learning each other in ways both intimate and profound. Harrison had been with women before, brief encounters in his younger years that meant little, but this was different. This was Adelaide, his wife, the woman who knew his deepest truths and loved him anyway. Every touch was a revelation, every whispered word a promise. In the weeks and months that followed, they built a life together that was uniquely theirs. Adelaide did not become a traditional ranch wife. She helped with the work when she wanted to, but also spent hours exploring the land, collecting fossils and rocks, making careful notes about the geology of the region. She started a correspondence with a professor at a university in the East who was fascinated by her observations and encouraged her to continue her studies. Harrison supported her completely, riding out with her on her expeditions, helping her carry heavy specimens, listening to her theories about the age of rock formations and the creatures that had once lived in this area that was now high desert. He found her passion infectious, found himself learning to see the land in new ways. Adelaide also got involved in the community, though not in ways people expected. She started a small school in their home, teaching children from the nearby farms and ranches who had nowhere else to go. She did not teach just reading and writing, but also science and history and critical thinking. Some of the parents complained that she was putting ideas in their children's heads, but others were grateful for the opportunity, and the school grew. She also spoke up at town meetings, advocating for a library and better roads and fair treatment of the Hispanic and indigenous people who lived in the area. Not everyone appreciated her outspokenness, and there were those who called her unnatural and improper. But there were others who admired her, especially some of the younger women who saw in Adelaide a model of what they might become. Through it all, Harrison stood beside her, steady and supportive. He defended her when people criticized, encouraged her when she doubted herself, celebrated her successes as if they were his own. He never asked her to be quieter or more conventional. He never suggested that she was embarrassing him or making his life difficult. He simply loved her and made space for her to be herself, exactly as he had promised. 2 years into their marriage, Adelaide's father hired a private investigator who tracked her to Abiquiu. The man showed up at the ranch one afternoon, impeccably dressed and completely out of place, demanding to speak with Adelaide Morgan. "It is Adelaide Cole now," Harrison said from the doorway, his voice cold. "And she does not wish to speak with you or anyone else from Philadelphia. Her father is prepared to offer a substantial sum if she will return home," the investigator said. "He is willing to forgive her transgressions if she will only come back and resume her proper place in society. I said she does not wish to speak with you." Harrison did not move from the doorway. "You need to leave, now. I have a right to speak with her, to deliver her father's message. You have no rights on my property, and Adelaide has made her choice. She is happy here. She has built a life here. Whatever her father is offering, she does not want it." The investigator looked past Harrison to where Adelaide had appeared behind him, her hand on her husband's shoulder. "Miss Morgan, please. Your father misses you. He wants you to come home." "I am home," Adelaide said calmly. "This is my home. Harrison is my family. Whatever life I might have had in Philadelphia died the day I left, and I am not interested in resurrecting it. He can offer you wealth, security, social position. I have wealth in the life I have built, security in a husband who loves and respects me. Social position is worthless if I have to stop being myself to maintain it." Adelaide's voice was firm. "Tell my father I am well. Tell him I am happy. Tell him not to send anyone looking for me again. I am exactly where I belong." The investigator tried a few more arguments, but Harrison simply closed the door in his face and locked it. They watched from the window as the man rode away, looking frustrated and confused. You think he will come back? Adelaide asked, leaning against Harrison. Not if he is smart. But even if he does, the answer will be the same. Harrison wrapped his arms around her. You are mine now, and I protect what is mine. I can protect myself too, you know. I know. But it is nice to have someone who will stand with you when you need it, is it not? Adelaide turned in his arms and kissed him. Yes, it is very nice indeed. 3 years into their marriage, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. It was not entirely a surprise, as they had stopped being careful about preventing it, but still, the reality of it was overwhelming. She told Harrison on a spring evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. I am going to have a baby, she said simply, watching his face for his reaction. Harrison went very still. A baby, our baby. Yes, are you happy? Happy. He pulled her into his arms, his voice thick with emotion. Adelaide, I am terrified and overjoyed and so in love with you I can barely breathe. Yes, I am happy. Are you? I am scared. I watched my mother die giving birth. I know how dangerous it can be. We will get the best midwife in the territory. We will take every precaution. I will not let anything happen to you. He held her tighter. I cannot lose you. You are everything to me. You will not lose me. I am too stubborn to die. Adelaide pulled back to look at him. I want this baby, Harrison, our child. I want to see what kind of person we create together. They will be brilliant like you, curious and passionate and brave. They will be steady like you, kind and honest and true. They held each other as the stars came out, talking about names and futures and all the ways their life was about to change. Harrison felt the same sense of wonder he had felt that day in the desert when he first saw Adelaide. The sense that his life was expanding in ways he had never imagined possible. Adelaide's pregnancy was difficult. She was sick for the first few months, and then exhausted, and then uncomfortable as the baby grew. But she refused to stop her activities entirely. She still taught her students, though she had to sit more and rest often. She still went on short expeditions to collect specimens, though Harrison insisted on going with her. She still spoke at town meetings, though now with a very visible reminder that women had other roles beyond speaking their minds. Some people in town disapproved, saying she should be home resting. Others admired her determination. Adelaide did not care either way. She was going to be herself right up until the moment the baby arrived, and nothing anyone said would change that. The baby came on a cold January night in 1882, a month before Adelaide's due date. Harrison rode through a snowstorm to fetch the midwife, then paced the main room while Adelaide labored for 8 agonizing hours. When the baby finally came, Harrison heard the cry and nearly collapsed with relief. The midwife brought the baby out, wrapped in a clean blanket. You have a son. Strong and healthy, and your wife is fine. Tired, but fine. Harrison took his son in trembling hands and looked down at the tiny red face, the shock of dark hair, the perfect miniature fingers. He is beautiful. He looks like you, the midwife said with a smile. Same strong jaw. Can I see Adelaide? Of course. She is asking for you. Harrison carried his son into the bedroom where Adelaide lay, pale and exhausted but smiling. She held out her arms and Harrison placed the baby carefully into them. Hello, little one, Adelaide whispered. I am your mother and I love you more than I knew was possible. What should we name him? Harrison asked, sitting on the bed beside them. I was thinking Henry Cole. It sounds strong. Henry. Harrison touched his son's cheek with one gentle finger. I like it. Henry Cole, welcome to the world. Those first months were exhausting. Henry was a demanding baby who did not sleep much and cried often. But he was also alert and curious, watching everything with bright eyes, reaching for objects with determined hands. Harrison fell completely in love with his son, spending hours just watching him, marveling at how something so small could be so perfect. Adelaide struggled more than she had expected. She loved Henry fiercely, but she also missed her freedom, missed being able to focus on her work and her studies. She felt guilty for missing those things, felt like she was failing at motherhood by not being completely consumed by it. "I love him," she told Harrison one night when Henry was finally asleep and they were alone. "But I also miss being just Adelaide, not Adelaide the mother." "Does that make me a terrible person?" "It makes you human and honest." Harrison pulled her close. "You do not have to be only a mother. You can be a mother and a teacher and a geologist and a wife. You can be all the things you are." "But how? There is not enough time in the day." "Henry needs me constantly. The students need me. The house needs attention. My work has been sitting untouched for months. Then we get help. We hire someone to help with Henry during the day so you can teach. We hire someone to help with the house. We make it possible for you to be all the things you need to be." Harrison tilted her face up to look at him. "I promised you that you would have space to be whoever you wanted to be. That does not change just because we have a child. We will figure this out." So they hired Maria, a young woman from town who loved children and was happy to care for Henry several hours a day. They paid Mrs. Alvarez to come more often to help with the housework. And gradually, Adelaide found her balance, learning to be a mother while still being herself. It was not always easy, and there were days when she felt pulled in too many directions, but with Harrison's support, she made it work. Henry grew into a bright, curious toddler who asked constant questions and got into everything. He loved the horses and the land and his mother's fossil collection. He would sit on the porch with Adelaide while she worked on her notes, playing with rocks and making up stories about the creatures that had left them behind. When Henry was 3, Adelaide published her first paper on the geology of northern New Mexico, working with the professor she had been corresponding with. It was a modest piece in a small academic journal, but it was real, and it had her name on it, Adelaide Morgan Cole. She cried when Harrison showed her the printed copy he had ordered specially. "I am so proud of you," he said, holding her while she cried. "You worked so hard for this. I could not have done it without you. You made this possible. You made it possible. I just made sure you had the space to do it." When Henry was 5, Adelaide became pregnant again. This time she was more prepared for what was coming, more confident in her ability to balance motherhood with her other passions. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and when the baby came in the spring of 1887, it was a quick labor that left Adelaide tired but triumphant. Their daughter was born with a full head of red hair and a loud voice. They named her Anna, and she was Adelaide's miniature in every way, fierce and determined and impossible to ignore. Henry was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything. He would bring Adelaide whatever she needed while she nursed, would sing to Anna when she cried, would tell her long, rambling stories about the horses and the land. Harrison watched his family growing and felt a contentment he had never imagined possible. The years passed in a blur of hard work and deep joy. The ranch prospered under Harrison's careful management. Adelaide continued her teaching and her geological studies, eventually publishing a small book about the fossils of New Mexico that was well received in academic circles. Henry and Anna grew, both of them inheriting their parents' intelligence and curiosity. When Henry was 12 and Anna was 7, Adelaide's father died. The news came in a letter from a lawyer in Philadelphia, informing her that she had inherited a substantial sum of money. The lawyer also included a final letter from her father, written shortly before his death. Adelaide read it on the porch, Harrison sitting beside her, ready to comfort if needed. The letter was short and stilted, her father's handwriting shaky with age and illness. Adelaide, I do not know if you will ever read this, but I wanted to try one last time to reach you. I was wrong. I was wrong to try to control you, to force you into a life that did not fit. I was wrong not to see who you really were. Your mother would have understood you. She always saw deeper than I did. I hear you have married and made a life in New Mexico. I hear you have children. I hear you are happy. I am glad. That is all I ever truly wanted, though I went about it the wrong way. I hope you can forgive me someday. Your father. Adelaide folded the letter carefully and sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, I think I forgive him, not for what he did, but for being human and flawed and unable to see beyond his own expectations. I think I can forgive that. What will you do with the inheritance? Harrison asked. Use it to expand the school, maybe build a proper schoolhouse so we can take more students, maybe fund some research expeditions to other parts of the territory. Adelaide leaned against him. Use it to build the life we want to live. That sounds perfect. They built the schoolhouse the next year, a sturdy adobe building with large windows and plenty of space for books and supplies. Adelaide hired 2 more teachers, and the school became known throughout the region for its quality education and unconventional methods. Children came from miles around, and Adelaide's influence spread. She also began leading expeditions into the backcountry, taking interested students and other amateur geologists on trips to study rock formations and search for fossils. Harrison went along when he could, still finding joy in watching Adelaide in her element, passionate and alive. Henry grew into a young man who loved the ranch and the land, who worked alongside his father with easy competence. Anna became a voracious reader and a fierce debater, already talking about becoming a lawyer even though everyone told her women could not practice law. Adelaide told her that laws could change, that the world was different than it had been when she was young, that Anna could be whatever she wanted to be. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Adelaide back to the place where he had first found her, beside the spring under the cottonwood tree. They rode out together at dawn, leaving the children with Maria, and spent the day there together. You ever regret it? Harrison asked as they sat in the shade, older now but still together. Saying yes to me after only 2 weeks, staying here instead of seeing more of the world, never, not even once. Adelaide took his hand. You gave me the world, Harrison. You gave me freedom and understanding and love. You gave me space to be myself. You gave me a family and a life that is entirely my own. What more could I possibly want? You could have been a famous scientist. You could have traveled to universities, given lectures, been recognized for your work. I am recognized by the people who matter. By my students and my peers, and most importantly, by myself. I know what I have accomplished, and I am proud of it. She smiled at him. And I did all of it with you beside me. That is worth more than fame. Harrison kissed her then, a long, slow kiss that tasted of 20 years of love and understanding. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I love you, Adelaide Cole. I have loved you since I read your words and realized I was not alone. I love you more every day. I love you too, Harrison. You are my best friend, my partner, my safe place. You are everything I did not know I needed. They stayed by the spring until sunset, talking and remembering and simply being together. And when they rode home as the stars came out, they rode side by side, partners in every sense of the word. The years continued to pass. Henry married a smart, practical woman named Ruth, who ran the town's new telegraph office. They built a house on the far end of the ranch and began raising their own family, giving Harrison and Adelaide grandchildren to spoil. Anna went away to school, one of the first women accepted to a university in California, studying law despite all the obstacles in her way. Adelaide and Harrison grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down. But their connection only deepened. They still sat on the porch every evening, still talked about everything and nothing, still found joy in each other's company. Harrison still looked at Adelaide with wonder, still marveled that this brilliant, passionate woman had chosen him. Adelaide still felt understood in a way she had never experienced with anyone else, still treasured the space Harrison gave her to be fully herself. On a warm summer evening in 1908, 30 years after Harrison had found Adelaide's diary in that abandoned wagon, they sat on their porch watching the sunset. Henry and Ruth's children played in the yard. Anna's latest letter sat open on Adelaide's lap, full of news about her work in San Francisco, where she had finally been admitted to practice law. "We did well," Adelaide said softly, "with our life, with our children, with each other. We did better than well. We built something real." Harrison took her hand, his fingers still fitting perfectly between hers. "I found your diary and I found you, and everything else followed from that. You understood me. That was the beginning of everything. I still understand you. I always will. I know. That is the gift you gave me. Being seen, being known, being loved for exactly who I am." They sat together as the light faded, as their grandchildren were called inside for bed, as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had been alone in the world until they found each other. Two people who had built a life based on understanding and respect and deep, abiding love. Harrison turned to Adelaide, his wife of 3 decades, his partner, his friend. "What are you thinking about?" "I am thinking that I used to feel like I was screaming inside a glass box. But I have not felt that way in 30 years, because of you, because you heard me." She smiled at him, her face lined with age but still beautiful to him. "I am thinking that I am exactly where I am supposed to be, with exactly who I am supposed to be with. So am I." Harrison leaned over and kissed her gently. "So am I." They stayed on the porch until the sky was fully dark and the Milky Way stretched overhead in all its glory. And then, hand in hand, they went inside their home, the home they had built together, the home filled with love and understanding and the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. They had found each other. And that had made all the difference. Years later, long after both Harrison and Adelaide had passed peacefully in their sleep within months of each other, their grandchildren would find Adelaide's original diary tucked away in a trunk. Beside it was a newer journal, this one in Harrison's less elegant but equally heartfelt handwriting. "I found her diary in an abandoned wagon," the first entry read. "I tracked her down and said, 'I understand you,' and then I spent the rest of my life proving it. She was the love of my life, my best friend, my everything. This is our story. This is how understanding became love, and love became a lifetime." The grandchildren would read both diaries, would learn about their grandparents' unconventional beginning, would understand where they came from, and why their family valued honesty and understanding above all else. And they would pass those values down to their own children, keeping alive the legacy of two people who had been brave enough to choose each other, to build a life on their own terms, to love without conditions or expectations. Harrison and Adelaide's story became family legend, told and retold at gatherings, a reminder that true love was not about possession or control, but about seeing and being seen, understanding and being understood. Their life together proved that two people who felt alone in the world could find each other and build something beautiful, something lasting, something real. And it all started with a diary found beside an abandoned wagon, words written by a desperate woman seeking freedom, read by a lonely man seeking connection. Those words had bridged the gap between two souls, had drawn them together across the vast New Mexico desert, had sparked a love that lasted a lifetime and echoed through generations. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the challenges they faced or the obstacles they overcame, but the simple, profound fact that they had found each other. That Harrison had read Adelaide's words and had understood. That Adelaide had trusted him enough to let herself be known. That together, they had built a life of mutual respect, deep love, and true partnership. Their graves sat side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the vast New Mexico sky they had both loved so much. The markers were simple, just their names and dates and a single line carved beneath. They understood each other. That was everything. And it was.